Hello, friends. If you're new, welcome to my channel. How about going down, hitting the subscribe button, and ringing the bell so you don't miss any episodes? As for my fans and subscribers, welcome back. I really appreciate all of you. Today's topic is the Connecticut witch hysteria. If you have not seen the first in this series, there is an eye in the upper right hand side. It is called The Witch Hysteria, Time Forgot, and this is a continuation of it, so you might want to see that one first. Not much else I need to say. Let's get on with the video. Surprisingly, a few who were charged with witchcraft were found not guilty. One of these was a 50-year-old woman named Elizabeth Goody Garlick. Her accuser, a 16-year-old girl named Betty Howell, said she stuck pins in her as torment. When Betty died the next day, her family blamed Garlick. This happened in East Hampton, which is today part of Long Island, New York, but at that time it belonged to the Connecticut colony. The East Hampton judges indicted her for the capital offense of witchcraft and sent her to Hartford to be tried in the Connecticut General Court. Luckily, the jurors in Hartford disagreed and found her not guilty. Yet this would become a pattern, not only in Connecticut, but later in Salem. Most people accused of witchcraft were older women, unjustly accused in order to explain tragic or baffling events. Most settlers were Puritans looking for religious freedom, how ironic, who brought their fear of witches with them from England. They thought that witches gave permission to the devil to use them to inflict disease, ruin crops, and perform any number of detestable acts. According to Puritans, witches lived to destroy Christians' souls, families, and communities. It was this certainty that led to the European witch hunts, which I will cover later. These witch hunts waxed and waned over several centuries, so they didn't take place all at once. In the 15th century, a book called the Malleus Maleficarum, translated The Hammer of the Witches, was published to provide ministers and magistrates with suggestions on finding and convicting witches. Most were women because men believed they were more vulnerable to demonic forces given their gender. This was especially true if they overstepped the lines of what males considered female decorum. Historians believe that this book had a huge impact on Puritan beliefs. Another thing that may have contributed to the witch hysteria was letters colonists received from England recounting stories of a young witch hunter named Matthew Hopkins. He had supposedly developed a foolproof method for getting confessions out of accused witches. One such method was searching and waiting, which required the accused to sit in one position for 24 hours. If they were a witch, a devil's familiar would appear to feed on the witch's teat. Other techniques included sleep deprivation, a version of the water test that included tying the accused to a chair before throwing them in the water, and cutting the arm with a blunt knife, and if the accused did not bleed, they were a witch. These methods resulted in more people being hanged for witchcraft in a 3-year period in England than the previous 100 years combined. Hopkins published a book in 1647 entitled The Discovery of Witches, in which he described these techniques. Letters written from England described the deaths of these accused witches, and the discovery of witches made its way to Connecticut. Both the Massachusetts Bay Colony governor and founder of Connecticut, John Winthrop Sr., recorded in their journals in May 1648 how Massachusetts magistrates followed Hopkins's techniques to collect evidence against an accused witch named Margaret Jones. Within the 24-hour period of searching and waiting, the magistrates supposedly saw an imp appear to feed on her witch's teat. Unfortunately, Jones became the first woman in Massachusetts to be executed for witchcraft in June 1648. The clergy did nothing but fan the flames of hysteria. Every week from the pulpit, ministers warned that even the righteous risked falling into temptation, and those who did were doomed. Cotton Mather encouraged the judges in the Salem witchcraft trials to accept spectral evidence at trial. This type of evidence consisted of claims that the invisible spirits of accused witches visited and tormented the alleged victim. Getting back to Connecticut, another woman accused of witchcraft, Mary Johnson, was found guilty of witchcraft by her own confession on December 7, 1648. Curiously, earlier that same day, judges dismissed the case of Catherine Palmer due to lack of evidence. She was, however, warned and fined because of unruly behavior. Mary had been a house servant that had been arrested and whipped 2 years earlier for stealing. It should be noted that Reverend Samuel Stone visited her in prison and encouraged her to confess, which she did, but we do not know how this confession was obtained. Stone allegedly told William Whiting about this confession, and though Whiting had no first-hand knowledge about this, told Mather, who included her story in his book published in 1689, Memorable Providences Relating to Witchcrafts and Possessions. According to this book, Mary first became acquainted with the devil through discontent, after which the devil rendered her many services. On top of this, she confessed to murdering a child. My question is, where is the body? And why didn't anybody report it? Stone visited her in prison, and she supposedly converted to Christianity. Most observers judged her to be repentant, but she was still executed. It's interesting to consider that Mary Johnson was taken at her word, given the position of women in Puritan society. Women's historian Elizabeth Reese noted a trend in Salem which may, at least in part, be applicable to Connecticut. Whether or not a person chose to confess to witchcraft parallels the ways in which they confessed generally to other sins. Because of the culture, women were more likely to see their own sin, no matter how small, as a deliberate pact with Satan. In confessions, women tended to confess in more general terms, admitting to things like quote-unquote vile natures, whereas men focused more on specific actions like drinking. Because of the culture, women were more convinced of their sinful nature, more willing to accept that they may have unwittingly made a pact with the devil. Although we don't know the details of Mary's confession because we have not found a document containing the confession that has survived, we know enough to draw general conclusions. She confessed to uncleanness, sex, so maybe she was confessing to termination of a pregnancy. The fact that she had twice been convicted of stealing may have compounded her guilt because she realized that she had committed several sins which the Lord hates. Throughout New England, we have evidence that those accused of witchcraft were put through an interrogation that, even in the absence of Hopkins's techniques, broke some people. Well, friends, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button, press the subscribe button, and if you want to know when I come out with new content, hit the bell next to the subscribe button. My Twitter, Discord, email, PayPal, and website links are in the description, along with the source that I used for this episode. Please remember I now have a merch store. Also, please leave comments in the comment section. Not only do I love hearing from you, but it also triggers the YouTube algorithm. Keep learning and searching for truth. Here are a few videos from my library. If you have not watched them yet, go ahead and watch them and tell me what you think. Until next time, friends, stay safe and goodbye.